Welcome back to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and continuing my rabbit hole trail, I guess is the best thing you can call it, that I've fallen down, of the May-June 2025 issue of Asimov Science Fiction, which had more than one story was a continuation of an earlier series in the May-June 2025 issue. So I decided to go back and not just read those earlier stories, but read the whole issues. And I went back first to June of 2004 issue, which I have right here. And so I'm going to be talking about all of the stories that are in here. But first, the other thing I want to do is start talking more about the artwork, because I'm a graphic designer professionally. Been working since 1993 steady as a graphic designer. And I have done some small illustration projects. I've been doing my own fine art since junior high school. And I have done some more serious fine art than that. And I'm still doing that sort of thing. I still maintain a corner of my office that has an easel and a drawing table and tabouret and all the supplies I need. So I am, even though I'm not really a professional fine artist, because I haven't been successful at selling much of anything, although I do continue to try. Currently, I have artwork here in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. Some artwork is for sale at Lakeshore Rock and Gem, and I've moved some of my artwork over to the Inky Blues Community Arts Center, it's called. A really, really good thing that reminds me a lot of the first art school I went to right out of high school down in Racine, run by Denise Zink, Spectrum School of the Arts, which is still there and still going with Denise Zing. So I really liked Inky Blues, even though I don't really like the name much. It's a really great place. They actually have space. I can go there and work. I can sign up and pay for a membership. I can exhibit my artwork there. I can exhibit it without making it for sale, but I've got some work for sale there. It's a great place. So, I have credentials as a fine artist, some credentials with illustration, and credentials as a graphic designer. And what really got me into all of it was illustration artwork on the covers of the paperback books I was buying. I fell in love with the covers of the paperback books. My parents had encouraged me to get into art before that, but I didn't really like landscapes, still lifes, portraits. I thought that was boring. But when I started reading science fiction, I started looking at those book covers and realizing those are paintings. That really fired me up, because I love the imagination of science fiction. I absolutely love the work of the illustrators on those books. So I want to spend some time talking, when I talk about these magazines, I want to spend some time talking about the illustrations. Now, too often for the new magazines coming out, the covers, well, they don't have interior illustrations anymore, which I think is a big loss, but I get it. It's money. Pages, price of everything going up, price of paper going up, price of postage going up. They got to make cuts someplace to keep the magazines alive, because they don't have that big of a subscriber list or that big of newsstand sales to justify continuing to do that. But they still do have full color covers. But so often lately, they're just using stock art. I look at the contents page and it says front cover iStock photo, or something like that. And that's disappointing, because I really, when I started reading the magazines, artwork by David Hardy and Barclay Shaw and Paul Lair on the covers of the magazines, what was just further inspired me to get into art. So I would really love to see more of that come back. I would even do some for a cheap price if they would want from me, but I'm not as good as a lot of the professional illustrators that have done work for these magazines in the past. So this is all about the cover of the the June 2004 issue of Asimov Science Fiction, which was done by Fred Gambino. And I will put a better photograph of it up in here so that you can see it while I'm part of the time that I'm talking here and can see what I'm talking about. But now Fred Gambino is a highly skilled, highly talented illustrator working both in traditional paint materials and in digital medium. 99% sure this artwork is digital artwork. But he has done works with traditional paint methods as well. And a little bit more about him. I don't know a ton about him. I've seen his work on covers, never really looked into him, so I don't, he's not as famous as like Frank Frazetta or Michael Whalen. But so I've never really looked into his biography or anything. I just notice his covers here and there and like them. And he was born September 3rd, 1956, which is why I said September before, because I was looking at my notes. And he was born in Derbyshire, England, so he's British. His first color science fiction or fantasy cover was for a UK edition of Outlaw of Gore in 1977, and I'll put that up. His first Asimovs cover was in August of 96, and this is it here. So by 2004, he had done a lot. He had already had a long career at the time he did this cover. I further looked more into Fred Gambino, taking an interest in doing this video, wanting to know more. I found that his latest art book, The Art of Fred Gambino, Dark Shepherd, is not very expensive. You can go on Amazon, get a brand new copy, even though it was published 2014. And it's a beautiful book. I believe everything in this book is digital. Don't want to show it too long because I don't want to violate his copyrights. But I believe everything in this book is digital. And it's amazing work. And Dark Shepherd seems to have been... He's done concept art for movies previously. And this Dark Shepherd project seems to have been a movie that he was conceiving of, which more recently he has gone and printed up 2 books of a Dark Shepherd series, 2 novels. But he originally conceived of this movie and wrote a screenplay, which is in here. It's a short screenplay, so it's probably just a treatment to try and sell the thing. And then he's got lots of concept art for it. And then the second half of the book is just other digital artwork that he's done by 2014. Nothing newer than 2014, of course. But his work is pretty amazing. It carries on a lot of the feel of British science fiction illustration that you got with artists like Chris Foss and Angus McKee, which is a rich tradition of highly imaginative technology and just really, really, beautiful compositions to their paintings, beautiful lighting to their paintings, beautiful colors to their paintings. That's kind of a specifically British tradition started by Chris Foss back in the 1970s and continues to this day with artists like Fred Gambino. And it's a welcome avenue of science fiction illustration. It's beautiful work. So then this one. In the issue here of Asimovs on the contents page and in the information about it in the ISFDB, it's just called Untitled, and it's not said to be specifically for a story, but the imagery and characters here look like it's definitely for James Patrick Kelly's Men in Trouble, which I'll talk about more in another video related to this. I'm dividing this issue up into a number of videos here. So it does look like it's illustrating the James Patrick Kelly lead story in this issue. But it's definitely digital. There's a slight chance I'm wrong, but it sure does look like digital. The main creature looks like it was created with a 3D program. The woman in here, who is a private investigator in the story, looks like it's a digital painting, like a Photoshop painting. And the whole, the background looks like a Photoshop airbrush background. I mean, I'm highly skilled in Photoshop, and I could be wrong, but I'm skilled enough that I can say, yeah, it does look like it was done in Photoshop, and I might be wrong still. But anyway, it's an okay painting, and it has some imagination, especially in that red winged creature. There's some kind of a robot here that just keeps reminding me of K9 from Doctor Who. There's a floating interface screen on it that looks like it was collaged into this in Photoshop. The whole thing does have the feeling of Photoshop collage and a combination of different digitally created elements, and they feel, the creature feels like it came from a 3D program because it's all shiny and very volumetric. The other things look like it was painted in Photoshop, which causes them to look different. It causes them to have an effect of, like I say, collage. Like one thing was created this way with this thing, and this other thing was created this other way, and they were cut and pasted together, and they don't really fit as a style. And so 2004, maybe it was early digital work by Fred Gambino, but sorry, as much as I love his work, as much skill as I see in all the rest of Gambino's work, this illustration comes across either rushed or lacking a certain amount of skill with digital tools. I can only speculate, and I can only say what I think based on my professional opinion. So it's definitely not my favorite cover, definitely not my favorite Fred Gambino work. It's okay. It's definitely better than, I gotta stop using the word definitely. I do like it a lot more than a lot of what I'm seeing on today's magazines. I just feel that even Fred Gambino can do better than this one. Sorry. So, what do you think of Fred Gambino? Please leave your comments. Like I said, this is just the start of the videos about the June 2004 issue of Asimovs. There's a lot I need to cover in this. There's a number of stories I'm breaking out on their own because this issue is just packed with Nebula Award finalists. None of them won, but lots of finalists just from that one issue of Asimovs, which is exciting. That's the way these magazines used to always be. I mean, granted, you didn't have a whole lot of other choices than Asimov's Analog and Magazine, Fantasy, and Science Fiction. All the other magazines were very hard to find before internet distribution came along. And so the short works were generally pulled from those three magazines. But still, to have three, I mean, all the magazines back then had 12 issues a year. 3 magazines, you got 36 issues to go through, to dig through. Plus, there were some other magazines that you could pull from. So, for a full 3 finalists to come from one issue of Asimov's is pretty remarkable. So, it's a good issue. And I have a lot to talk about with it. So I hope you'll come back and join me. Leave your comments about Fred Gambino, what you think about what I said here, in the comment section of the video. And come on back for a lot more about this issue of Asimov's. I finished reading it. It's the first one that I went back on. And interesting thing with that is I went back to the June 2004 because I went back to the 2012 issue of Asimov's, which had a sequel by James Patrick Kelly to Men Are Trouble. So then I went back to this issue for Men Are Trouble, and there was nothing else that took me back further from this issue. So then I went to the next with the James Patrick Kelly story in The Last Judgment. I had gone back to that one because there are other stories in that issue that are related to stories in the 2022 issue that has the first of the Lemuria 7 stories by Alan Steele. Okay, so then I started looking forward to the next issue that had a related story in, which was 2017, and I saw that had a Rudy Rucker story in, which is going to take me all the way back to 1996. I can't get a hold of the original source of that story, but it is in his collection Transreal. I got a hold of a copy of that, and boy, is that a nice book. So I'll be going all the way back to 1996 yet for a Rudy Rucker series and reading that whole series in order to get up to the 2017 issue of Asimov's, in order to get to the 2022 issue with the first Lemuria 7 story, and then be able to come back. But even then, I can't come all the way back to the May-June 2025 issue. I have to go back to the March-April issue because of the first part of a 2-part serial by Nancy Kress. Really, really complicated, but I mean, this is the great thing about the magazines is that there is so much rich work, and it's the reason why it's difficult to just pick up an issue and just read it, because, well, with the James Patrick Kelly, The Last Judgment, you could read it without going back and reading Men Are Trouble, but I'm really glad that I did what I did. I feel The Last Judgment was a much better story to read after reading Men Are Trouble, because there were certain things in The Last Judgment that was referring back to Men Are Trouble. So you probably don't have to read Men Are Trouble to understand The Last Judgment, but they're still very related, and so I felt it was a good idea to have done that. And you're going to find that with these magazines, to pick up just pick up the May-June issue of 2025 issue of Asimov's as your very first Asimov's, and you got a couple stories that you really need to go backwards in order to appreciate those stories. It's both a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because it keeps you coming back for more issues if you know there's going to be more stories related to a favorite story. But it's a bad thing for the person who's just now discovering the magazines and coming across all these stories and going, well, this one's a sequel to that, this other one's a part of a whole long series. How do I get all this stuff? They were published in magazines years ago. Well, fortunately, the internet is there, and you can get pretty much any of these magazines, used copies, but you can get, this one, this is a used copy. It's in perfect condition. It didn't even, whoever had this was not a subscriber, so there's no subscriber label on it. It's in perfect shape. And I've gone and opened it up and read it, and I was careful, and so it's still in perfect shape. So you can get those magazines. You can even get some of the really, really old science fiction magazines if you're interested in those. Though a lot of those are more easily found as PDFs online. Okay, so Fred Gambino. If you love him, you have thoughts about him, please leave comments. I'd like to hear them. Otherwise, come on back for a lot more about the June 2004 issue of Asimov's Science Fiction Magazine and all the other videos that we do in between. There'll be other things. Even this week that this video premieres, you'll see other things not related to that issue of Asimov's going up on the channel. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I hope you'll be seeing me again very soon.